Okay, hi everyone. My name is Neil Graham from Scottish Rugby. Thank you very much for dialing into this webinar. I'm joined today by Dr. Karen Barclay. We are here
Hello.
today to provide information on the youth age banding policies for next season. Just a bit of an overview before we get into some of the policies, and these policies will be able to be found on our website and supplementary information following this. But what we know about age banding in the youth game is that we have physical mismatches in our sport. We are a contact sport, and those physical mismatches can lead to an increased risk of injury if they're not managed correctly. So our policies seek to minimize these mismatches, although we're not going to get rid of mismatches altogether, but obviously trying to group players with similar physical size, potential skill level will help reduce or minimize some of these risks. We know that everyone reaches maturity at a different time, which can result in physical mismatches within a same age band. So actually chronological age isn't the best indicator of physical maturity, and we'll come into how some of our policies and some of our assessment procedures are going to help reduce some of these mismatches moving forward. We know that by grouping players by their skill level and physical maturity can have quite an immediate impact upon reducing some injury risks and also help create a really good environment for players to be nurtured and develop their skill level. Playing with like-for-like players of a similar skill and physical potential and maturity can really add to the overall player experience. So that's a bit of an overview of why we have the policies and what the policies are about to do. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Karen Barclay now. Karen's going to take us through some of the policies and we'll provide further information on our website at a later date. So thanks very much, Karen. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil. So we've been looking at our policies for over the last 18 months or so to try and work out what is the best way forward, and we've taken a fair bit of time to try and make sure that what we do is going to represent the best way forward. So we have updated our policies. We now have our, for exceptional 15-year-old players who want to play up into under 18 rugby, we have a fairly unified policy, applies to both male and female. It's important that we get some good details on the players, so we want to make sure these players are players that are of a physical skill level that allows them to play up into a more physical age band. And we think that when we're looking at what makes a player ready to play up, it's a good coaching assessment that says, yes, this player can cope with the demands of playing up. It's also important that that player is physically prepared for playing up, and that's why we've added in the necessity to have a structured S&C programme in place as part of that application. And as we know that the tackle area is the area that most injuries happen, we want to make sure that the player is capable of tackling at the level that we would want them to tackle at in playing up. So there is a new tackle assessment. Now, it's different to previous tackle assessments that we've maybe used in other aspects of our old playing up policies. And it's designed to just make sure the player is physically capable of delivering a good tackle, but is also able to do that when there's an element of fatigue present as well. For players that wish to play up, we also want to make sure that they're physically mature enough to do that. So we know that if your skeleton is roughly the same age, your bone age is roughly the same age as the people that you're playing with, that does help to reduce that injury risk. So we're going to undertake a physical maturity assessment by appropriately trained Scottish Rugby staff. And our decision as to whether you are ready and it's appropriate for you to play up will be made on the basis of a number of these elements and the information that we gather through the application form. So similarly, 17-year-olds into adult rugby, that is a policy that again applies for male and female, and very similar process in that we do need to see that there's a structured S&C programme in place. We do need to see that tackle assessment being successfully completed, and obviously input from the coach in terms of suitability, players' previous playing history, and that kind of rugby IQ bit is important with that too. At the moment, those players that are 17-year-olds that want to play up and play in the front row, at the moment we're only able to invite male players for the next strength assessment. So unfortunately, female players will not be able to play up in the front row position until they turn 18. However, we will hopefully be able to, we have ongoing work going on to hopefully make sure that we're able to give parity to this part of the assessment as well. Again, ability to play up into adult rugby will be based on all these features put together. Okay, so physical maturity, this is the exciting science bit, and I'm personally quite excited that we've been able to do this. This is something that is probably unique in rugby, but we're going to be using a piece of kit to actually assess physical maturity. So we're going to be using a sonic bone device, completely painless. We have tested this in some players over the last season just to see whether it would work as an assessment tool, and we think it does actually work. It takes about 4 minutes to do. We're just doing some painless measurements on 3 different positions on your left hand, and with that it actually gives us, it tells us what your bone age is, and your bones can be a different age to your actual chronological age because of the sort of vagaries of how we all progress differently through maturity. But it's an important part of working out whether it is appropriate and safe enough for you to play up. That's a really accurate piece of kit. It's validated with a number of scientific studies, and it is used quite widely in sport in terms of maturational assessment, but it is a new piece of kit for rugby.
Excellent, thanks, Karen. Yeah, very exciting bit of kit, and yeah, looking forward to being able to use it within these policies. The other piece of the assessments that we've been discussing and Karen described is the tackle assessment. So just wanted to give you an overview of the changes to the tackle assessment. There are 2 activities that the player who is applying to play up must undertake, and these must be videoed and then submitted with the application form. Further details and a full information pack is available on these tackle assessments. The first activity is a very simple activity that requires the player to make repeated effective tackles within 1 minute, and their challenge is to attempt to make 8 tackles within that minute. And you'll see the player undertaking these at the moment is working hard to get into a good low position, make a good solid contact, wrap the arms and complete the tackle. So that the pressure here is that they'll be under fatigue for some of this activity. So we're looking for players to maintain a good effective tackle technique throughout the whole minute, and obviously try and make 8 effective tackles in that period. As we progress on, the second activity is more of a real-life game-paced activity. So we really want the ball carriers in this activity to be running and at full pace, or as near to full pace as possible, really trying to evade the tackler if possible, as we want to assess the tackler's ability to make decisions, tackle off both shoulders, and really just make effective, safe tackles. So the player in red is the player in this video who's going to be assessed, and you'll see the ball carrier is just attempting to get past the tackler in a small grid, and this is repeated so the player makes at least 4 tackles, preferably 2 off each shoulder as we progress. But we want this to be as real life as possible. The previous tackle assessment that we've had in this policy has been quite walking speed, but we really want this to be at full pace so we get a good understanding of the player's ability in a real life scenario. They should also be tackling players who are from the age group in which they want to play against. So if it's a 15-year-old looking to play or apply to play under 18 rugby, the players who they're tackling must be all of that in that under 18 age bracket. So that's the tackle assessment. Move on to Karen, who's just going to give a little bit of update on the last policy, which is our play down in age grade. Thanks, Karen.
We've introduced a more formal playing down in age grade policy, and primarily this is a policy that allows players who are a little bit slower through to start their journey to full maturation and therefore fall behind their peers in terms of height and weight, and they may feel that they're better suited to playing in a younger age band until they've kind of caught up. So very similar process to all the other applications. There is an application form that needs to be completed by a suitably qualified coach, and obviously with parent or guardian consent as well. We need a fairly good feel for why this player's rugby development will be better if they're able to play down in age grade. We'll ask you to submit a height and weight on the application form so that we can kind of check that they meet the trigger height and weights. Now, these table for the trigger height and weights are published on the website and as part of the policy documents. I would say that these are guide height and weights, and that if you are close to those values and there's a good reason why you want to submit a form, we will still look at that if you're close to the values, but anyone that's way off the values will not have their application progressed. Again, the player will be invited in to have a physical maturity assessment with the sonic bone device, and there also will be a discussion by Scottish Rugby staff with the player just to check that they are happy with this process, that there's that they're keen to play down that age band as well. And the decision for playing down is made for the rest of that season, and it's based on all the parameters that we've gathered through the application form and through the physical maturity assessment. The idea of this is just to try and keep players who are later developers playing rugby and keep them in the game, because there's so many advantages for doing that. Okay, Neil. Summary documents. So this is just the summary of what we're doing and how we can do that. We haven't changed that our maximum youngest player to oldest player on the pitch has to be 2 years. But we have put a little bit of clarity into some of these other policies to try and help things. So you'll notice that players that are 15 and 16, so those that are actually under 16 and under 17 rugbies, they can play together without the need for that play up dispensation, which previously would have had to have happened, providing that 2-year age banding is absolutely adhered to. Again, overview there, and all the policy documents will be live on our website at the end of this webinar.
Brilliant, thanks Karen, that's great, and thanks to everyone for dialing into this overview. We have a new email address, age.banding@sru.org.uk, where you can email in, ask questions, but also submit the application forms. The QR code will take you through to the web page where all the final policy details, application forms and FAQs can be found. Please get in touch if you have any questions, and we hope you have a great summer and look forward to seeing you next season. Thanks again, Karen.
Okay.